Well, welcome, you guys. We every so often, Catherine and I both talk on the regular, as soul sisters do, but there comes a moment where we both come to the realization that we need to come on and work some magic together. And so that happened recently, and we jumped on a call, and we have no preconceived ideas of what we're going to let come through, but then the idea will ultimately land, which it did. After a lot of conversation, we really sensed that there was a theme circling around everything that we were talking about, and that was around self-trust. So we ultimately settled on the pleasure and pain of self-trust as the title, because depending on where you are with your own level of self-trust, it will provide you one or the other, sometimes both. And it's such a, Catherine and I are both, for those, I think you all know us, we're both very, what I would call practical spiritualists. We really want that our spiritual nature, how do we be humans as true spiritual humans? And so these types of conversations about like self-trust, could we get on here and talk about all kinds of other really cool topics about energy and stuff? Yes. And also we both understand that the more you move through the ascension journey, the more you really are exploring your consciousness, the more human you become. And so we really need to dive into things like self-trust, and knowing that self-trust is a two-way street. You cannot say you trust the universe, but not trust yourself. And you can't trust yourself and not trust the universe, because ultimately we are one. But that sort of was the centerpiece of, I think there's going to be a lot of interesting conversations. We'll both be checking the chat. So make sure that if you have questions or comments or whatever, for me, at least, I'm not going to speak for how it works for Catherine, but for me, when I'm bringing my channels open, when people are asking questions, engaging, it allows for more information to come through. So the more that you engage us, I think the more juicy nuggets we're going to get out of this whole conversation.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. So I'll let you kind of launch off. I have lots of notes from when we were talking, but I think we usually just sort of let it rip.
Yes.
And yeah, I think you go ahead and just sort of.
Yeah, well, you touched on a great, foundation for this whole conversation, is that if you don't trust the universe, if you don't trust money, you don't trust yourself.
Yep.
If you don't trust that there are supportive relationships out there, you don't trust in your ability to support yourself. It's never outside in. It's always something that's dictated inside out. Your inner reality every single time is going to set the template for what you experience as what you think of as your external reality, your external experience. And that self-trust piece, especially as we're going forward, this is something I've been talking about so much lately. We are proceeding in uncertain times, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So there has to be some port in the storm.
Yes.
If everything outside of us is changing on the daily, systems, structures are dismantling, collapsing as we speak, what is it that gives you port in the storm? Where do you find that, immutable strength and foundation? It's got to be inside, because that's the only thing that you really have control over anyway. You don't have any control over anything in your external reality, nothing, but you always have the foundation of your own ability to respond to life, to anything that's happening in your life, whatever challenge, whatever trigger. And if that trust, that self-trust isn't rock solid, what kind of port is that in this storm? Because this storm isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
Newsflash. Spoiler alert, everyone.
Right? Like we're just starting to see things go in the right direction, and we're starting to feel into this right direction. And this is wonderful, but this is a protracted process. And so we need to buckle in. And what are we going to buckle into? You know, do we trust ourselves to be able to navigate in very uncertain times? That's what it comes down to.
Yes.
Would you agree?
Totally. Yeah. You know, word that we've been talking a lot about in Intrepid, which is part of the definition of the word intrepid, is undaunted. And that word comes simply from exactly what we're talking about. Trust in self, what I say, self and source. So this idea that you're really anchored into the knowingness. So trust, people will be like, what do you really mean by trust? It's a knowingness that you're cared for. What do we need as humans? Really two things, love and safety. So that knowingness that you're first of all connected to source, that you feel capable to handle whatever is happening in your external world, to handle it, that you can deliver to yourself love and safety. And that's the foundation of everything. So then you talk about, that's where, look at it where it comes to money or health or relationships or your work or your purpose. The same rules apply to that, right?
It's all rolled in.
Yeah,
absolutely. And that trust piece is what informs that kind of relationship that you're having with everything. I mean, I'm not just talking about another person, and I'm not talking about a family member, a peer, a friend, coworker. We have relationship. Everything about our life is a relationship because we are relating to something, someone, an experience, right? Everything is a relationship.
Yeah.
And we'll never really be authentic in our relationships, genuine in our relationships, unless that trust piece is there.
Right.
I mean, to me, when people say, you know, I'm in integrity or I'm living an authentic life, okay, to me, I automatically make that correlation. That is that this is someone who feels capable in any situation. This is someone that trusts in themselves to be able to show up and handle whatever happens to cross their path.
Right.
Of course, we're humans, we're imperfect, we falter, but can you pick yourself back up? Can you be the one that has that strength and fortitude that, like, okay, it didn't work out this one time. Yeah. I can see where I need to tweak this or that or whatever. I'm not going to give up because that's not a possibility, right? So the trust piece comes in those times where we feel like we failed. Although in my opinion, there's no such thing. It's an opportunity to learn how to do something better. It's never an excuse to just stop what you're doing. It's a way for you, if you have that inner strength, that self-trust, to look at, okay, what if I didn't fail? What if I was just given an opportunity to see that I could do it differently? Yeah. If you don't trust yourself, that's not going to happen.
Right? Yeah, you won't be able to self-reflect on that. I mean, when you come into those times where you think, I wanted it to be this way and it wasn't this way. And so a lot of people will shrivel up, or they'll say, see, it wasn't for me. Oh, right. I chose the wrong path, not one right path. And really what this is about, it's about reflecting, because usually when something maybe doesn't go the way we wanted, we missed our intuitive voice. We just kind of moved right over it, or we talked ourselves out of it, felt a little bit too uncomfortable. So if you can give yourself the chance to self-reflect, if you trust that you are always, everything is always as it should be, that you can then reflect and go, yeah, you know, I knew that. I felt that in my gut. I kind of thought I shouldn't have done that, signed that contract, but I did it anyway. Right. Yeah. So it's that level of certainty comes from this connection to self, your level of discernment. People that are like, I don't know. How many times have you or I heard, like, I don't know, I'm not clear, I'm not sure, right? Because there's no sense of discernment. There's no practice of discernment, because they don't trust themselves to hear their intuitive voice nudges, and B, act on it. Yeah. That's
and that's the key.
It's everything. That's literally everything in 3D life, 5D. I mean, it doesn't make any difference what D you want to talk about. That's everything.
True.
I mean,
especially true in 3D, and as we're moving into 4D, and I think we've got, you know, 1 foot in 4D more than we do in 3D at this point, because that's such a realm of duality. And here we are, we're finding every day that there's this inner conflict and battle being waged within us of what's right and what's wrong. And it's like, well, it's not that black and white. And I think we get into the self-trust piece and we talk ourselves out of it is we just think it is that black and white. There's one right answer and there's one wrong answer. There's a big gradient there.
Yeah.
And if you trust yourself, even if you think you've made the wrong choice, there is still always an option to course correct. You're just hitting somewhere else on that gradient that I was talking about, because there is no one, standalone right, and there is no one standalone wrong.
Yes.
It's a lot of different variables there. And if it's that self-trust piece is there, that's like saying to yourself, I can always course correct.
There's so many options
for me at the time would be a better way to say it.
Yeah.
Right.
And the opportunity to recognize there's infinite number of options available to you, infinite number of choices available to you. And thinking about that, when you're talking about the gradient, I've been playing more, because we talk a lot about duality. You and I had this conversation. I've been playing more with this idea of almost polarity. And to me, it feels like this bridge, but like I keep feeling it in this way. Sometimes the way I feel energy is kind of interesting. But when I think about polarity, I think about, have you ever seen them make saltwater taffy?
Mm-hmm.
And they pull it and then it comes back together, and then they pull it and it comes back together. Like that almost feels like this 4D energy is very much, it's not letting go. We're not letting go, and we're not entirely going from here to there. Like there's this relationship where it's just really malleable all the time. And that is what gives us the opportunity to be like, I'm going to play in here knowing that I am safe ultimately, that I know that I can make choices, and whatever choice I make, it's going to be supported. Now the support might be like right up the back of the head, like, hey girl, there wouldn't have been an easy way to do that. The support might come with great ease, but it's always supported.
Yeah.
What happens for a lot of people is they don't make a choice, because
even that's a choice.
That it will either be the right one, or that they know what to do, or that they can handle it, or whatever. So they stay stuck and inert, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. But even making no choice is still a choice.
Well, yes.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Because what it all comes down to is choices, right? And we touched on this when we had our amazing conversation last week, that, it really is about our choices. Every single moment we're deciding who we be by what we choose to put our energy on.
Yes.
Whatever thought we're ruminating on, whatever feeling we happen to be marinating in, whatever action we're contemplating or deed we're contemplating actually doing. It's all about the choices that spring from that energy.
Yeah.
And are your choices informed, or are they uninformed? I think that's what it comes down to. Are they aligned? Or are they unaligned? And the only way that you can really be unaligned is if you're going against yourself.
Yes.
I think the most potent form of self-betrayal is when you make unaligned choices. You literally choose to go against yourself. And that could be feeling in the moment, this isn't right, but everyone outside of me is telling me this is the way to go. That's out of alignment. Yep. That's out of integrity. It's not authentic. It's not genuine, because you're going against yourself. And so it's not even that you can't course correct from that. You absolutely can. But problem is, many of us go through our lives feeling like this person outside of me or this institution outside of me knows better. It's been around longer than I have, or whatever. And we find our ways to talk ourselves out of our informed choices by thinking, well, it's been done before this way, or that's what's being dictated over here. But if you're honest with yourself and you're present with that choice in the moment, is this aligned with my desire? Is this aligned with where I want life to be taking me?
Yes.
And sometimes we even give ourselves just that beat, that 1 second to sit with that in stillness. We'll know where we're making a choice that goes with ourselves or against ourselves.
Yeah. And that's such a great point, because I think you and I talk about this a lot. You have a whole program around it, but alignment is a choice. I think for a lot of people, that's gotten real distorted, that they think there's like something that's going to happen, and then the alignment's going to like click onto them or something. I don't entirely know what, but it is a moment to moment choice to honor your inner knowing, to honor your desires, to honor what you feel is the right action for you. that is alignment, and you're constantly making those choices. And so I often will say it's in alignment or it's out, because
right.
you're either making the choice to follow your inner self or you're not.
Yep.
Plain and simple.
That's it.
I mean, that's the whole thing. So what bigger choice could there be than to choose alignment, to choose
True.
self, to choose, because ultimately that's talking about our connection to source, is that sort of guiding light, if you want to talk about it, that we're actually aligning to.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So Felicia went right for the jugular here and asked us, what does it mean to be human? She's like going all in on deep stuff right away.
Well, you know, do you mind if I take that one?
Yeah,
Because there's
go
something
for
that came to mind right away.
Yes.
You know, we talk about ascension. I mean, I've been talking about ascension and teaching about all things unity consciousness, because that is, you know, what ultimately what we're striving for.
Yep.
And we're doing it from a human perspective, meaning we're working with duality, we're working with polarity, we're working with constant contrast. Okay.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that we have to live at the mercy of this contrast or polarity. It again comes down to choices.
Yeah.
And being in this kind of perfect marriage between your human and source, human and spirit, whatever you want to call it, that your God self, I like to call it, is choosing in those moments, in the stillness, what's the highest and best good for me here? But I also go a little further. What's the highest and best good of all? And I think that merging these principles, ethics, values of ascension, which is ultimately unity consciousness, if you ask me,
Yes.
into our human level of experience and perspective, is about living each moment with a choice that is looking at, yeah, what's best for me, but how does it also benefit the all and the good of all, but how does it involve the least amount of resistance for all involved? That to me is living in harmony. If you establish an inner coherence,
Yes.
you make it bigger than just you, which is where we need to be going. It's got to be bigger than us. You know, you and I would both say in our work, we love what we do. We are lit up. We are passionate in what we do, but it's bigger than us. And we know that. Yes. And we take on the mantle of responsibility with that. And it's big.
Yeah.
But living as a human is almost like descension.
Because
it's taking the highest principles and ethics of all that I'm talking about, and then bringing it down, into a lower dimensional reality realm. That takes some navigation, because a lot of us who are here as like placeholders, way showers, etc., we are used to being in a higher vibration.
Yes.
Operating in a lower vibration is not natural. It's not home for us, in other words.
That's right.
So it's really descension when I think about it, because it's bringing all of this down into a human physical body, a density that we're not used to.
Totally.
And many of us who are here on this call would resonate that, I would think.
Totally.
So I hope that helps, Felicia, to answer her question. But how would you take that on?
I completely concur with all of that. I think, you know, I often, in sort of a playful way of thinking about it, sort of say it's like the PhD level of souls. Like, you know, we talk a lot about other beings, or, you know, people love to talk about Arcturians and Palladians and all of that. And humans are not just another species, but this is a big deal to come into a human body, to choose to come in knowing that you will experience amnesia. Like, there's 1,000 reasons why. It's a massive deal. Yeah. And it is an unbecoming, a descending, and also it is, well, how would I say? It is the act of becoming a spiritual human, meaning really integrating our spiritual aspect as much as we can bring into this form, right? Which isn't all of us, by the way.
And it's not ever meant to be complete in this go round anyway.
But when we do that, then we do, to your point, we do affect the world around us, the people around us, the communities around us, the people that we, you know, share our online space with, whatever. That's how it's designed. That's why we came here, to really anchor in that energy, and also to more fully utilize the human vessel. Yes. Right. I mean, we could really go deep on all about DNA and really what the capacity, and none of us actually know the full capacity of the body and longevity and all of that. But suffice to say, it's not what we've been doing. Right. So there's going to be, I think, more probably in the next generation as we've hit that sort of tipping point, and we're going to see more of what the human body is actually made to do and be as a spiritual human. But there are some of us that are definitely noticing that and aware of that. And so when you talk about even spiritual gifts and that kind of thing, we're really utilizing our the vessel that we were given to kind of operate around with, and then also making that connection that you were talking about, that sort of dissension, and bringing it into a 3D plane when we're used to operating. And we spent a lot of time, I think you would agree, in the last, maybe not so much the last 2 years, but the 5 years before that, everybody was like out of their body all the time. Like we were like so excited about all the, you know,
as if that was some sort of badge of honor, right?
Yes, right. And I think now most of us, not everybody, but most of us acknowledge that the more ascended, the more of your ascension process that you move through, the more human you become, actually.
Yes.
So it's a very
I would
interesting.
agree with that assessment, 100%.
Yeah,
absolutely. And what it really means to be human, because it's going to change our meaning around that. The more we inhabit source, you know, what it will mean to be human is going to change. And so, you know, there's that self-trust piece again. If we can bring it back around to the to self-trust, is that this is all part of the plan. It's all part of our progression through higher stations of awareness. You know, the body's going to change, and our beliefs about the body and what holds these structures, organs, tissue in place is going to change.
Yes.
You know, when we, you know, the Olympics are playing right now, and I'm always looking at the world of sports to just see how we can redefine what the body does. You know, there's one of the figure skaters just did a quad, which was never been done in an Olympic platform before. And it's like, there's one example right there. You know, we're learning to do things with our bodies all the time. We look at like the extreme games around like Red Bull sports or whatever, like snowboarders are like, how do you go up in the air and turn like 8 times like that?
They broke a record last night. They broke a record last night in height.
So we're doing this all the time.
Yes.
And when we just look at the simple examples on display for us all the time with what's capable with humanity, what's capable with our human bodies, you know, we can anchor into the idea that yes, we are changing, and this is, you know, not always for the worse. You know, if we pay attention to the mainstream news and all of that, you know, a lot of our attention is going to be what's changing for the worst, but that ain't the whole story.
Right.
That's only a tidbit of what's happening. There's a lot of amazing things happening, but where does your attention lie? Where does your focus, you know, where is that being held? You know, where are you being kind of hypnotized by the things that are devastating in the world? You could be just as easily as distracted and hypnotized by the things that are wonderful that are happening and the changes that are right in front of us every single day. But where's your attention? Where's your focus? That's up to us. That's a choice.
Yes.
Too, right.
Yeah, I think, you know, and if you want to use another word or another way, because I really think it's important when we were talking about, actually, Felicia kind of turned us on to something that was really good here, with the humanness and this sort of idea of either descending or unbecoming this, all of the programs and ideas and false beliefs that we have about ourselves. It really is, the trust is really about remembering who you are. Because there's a lot of women, and I know, and I can pick up on a couple that are like, well, maybe, you know, for you guys, but not me. Like, I'm just a regular person, right? I'm just a regular person. It's really that the trust, it's really that remembering of who you actually are as a spiritual being, experiencing a life here that you chose, that you're actually. People love to be like, nah, I'm never coming back again, blah, blah, blah. Listen, we wanted to do this. Okay. So it starts with the remembering and those, and I think a lot of people are probably going to go, great, well, how do I do it? I don't trust myself. Right. So then that becomes, what small ways can we start so that you can provide yourself with the evidence of who you really are, and what you're capable of, and start showing yourself time and time again that you can be trusted. You're literally showing it to yourself. I just had this conversation with one of my clients, and it was, she made a blanket statement. I'm really big on words and themes and things that people say. And what she said, just kind of off the cuff, is, I never show up for myself. It's like, okay, that's interesting. So let's talk about that, because as far as I see, you show the fuck up about almost everything. You sign up for a program, you are the first one into our Zoom meeting. You know, you do want to exercise and you do it. Like, you're constantly showing up for yourself. So it's funny how then it became this, like, letting it fall away. She's like, where the hell did that even come from? I like to always show up for myself, but how quickly we forget. So we have to be real intentional about showing ourselves. Maybe it is just looking for the evidence. I said, just look back for the last 12 months. Give me 10 things that you showed up for yourself for. And she could rattle them off like that.
Of
like,
course.
there's the evidence, right? So that, if you're a person who thinks you don't trust yourself, or you're like, I don't know about all this, that would be my first place to start is, well, how can I start to remember? How can I start to really show myself? Maybe it's keeping your word to yourself. If you sign up for a program, show the fuck up. Right. If you say you're going to drink more water, drink the water, right? I mean, it is little things that matter. I think the little things all the time really, really make a difference.
Absolutely. It's those micro commitments that we make to ourselves throughout the day. When we, and I've talked about this many times, is that the easiest way to erode self-trust is to not keep those commitments you make to yourself. And it might be a little promise that you say in the morning when you're lying in bed, I'm going to do this today, but your body's listening. The higher master aspect of you, your God self, is listening. Every time you make a commitment, a dedication, a promise to yourself, and you don't keep it, you are out of integrity with who you are. And you're not betraying anyone else. You're betraying yourself. And you are eroding your self-trust. You are literally breaking down your own relationship that you're having with yourself. In my estimation, there's nothing more devastating than that.
I agree.
Because it's going to inform everything else outside of you.
And if you can't trust yourself, how can you trust anyone?
Keep commitments. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it spills into everything, right? Because if you're not really trusting yourself, the reason you can't trust other people is because you don't trust yourself. Well, if you don't, you're always breaking commitments to yourself.
Right.
And you would automatically assume other people are going to do that to you also. They probably do it to themselves. You're not really recognizing that this is the whole deal. And so many of us as spiritual teachers talk about, it's the self first before anything. I mean, every time I talk to someone who's like wants a relationship, or, starting a business and wants more clients and all the things, I know it ain't sexy. I know we'd like to talk about, some unicorns and shit or something, but this has to be it here. Yeah.
It's everything. It's literally everything. Because it's always inside out. It's never outside in. We often think, well, this triggers over here, this challenge or issue is showing up again over there. Okay, well, how did it get there? Yeah. If it's showing up as conflict in your life, where is the conflict within you first? There's always that tidbit that we have to keep going back to every single time. And I wanted to before I forget, because you mentioned something when you're talking about your client a moment ago, that we touched on this when we had our amazing conversation last week, is that we're often defining our reality by who we aren't yet or what we don't have. Yes. And we create self-identifying stories for ourselves based on, what we haven't, what goal we haven't achieved yet, what superficial material thing we have not accessed yet, whatever it is. And when we're constantly in that space, we're constantly in ego, and we're working with a source grid of energy that really, it depletes itself, because the only thing in that source grid of energy to supply, because you can create from that level, but it's a finite supply, and you're harnessing energy from yourself instead of self-replenishing. So when you're working with that level of, I'm defining myself through who I am not yet or what I don't have yet, you're working with a dry well. There's no energy there. There's no really, self-replenishing, self-perpetuating creative mana. We always have to go with, well, who am I when things are working out? And there's always where you're mining self-trust
Yes.
from that place. When you were asking your client to take an inventory of
Yep.
her life and, giving yourself evidence, what you're really doing is you're not giving your higher self evidence, you're giving the ego evidence.
That's right.
Because your higher self doesn't need evidence for shit.
No.
Your ego needs the evidence. So
That's
it
right.
can stop, chattering from that inner critic level.
Yes.
And just constantly harnessing energy and telling you all the things you aren't yet, all the, your inner critic. And I say it to my clients in my in alignment group, your inner critic is a loser. Your inner judge is a loser. It's like an Eeyore energy.
Yeah.
It's there to be a guidepost, right? It's there to give you contrast. It's just programming. But the more we listen to it, the more we tend to go into a place of self-denial, self-betrayal over and over again, not making commitments to ourselves, promises to ourselves. And the more we do that, we erode self-trust.
Yes.
It's ratios. It all works together.
Totally. Well, and your ego is always looking for evidence of what your primary thought forms are. It's like, well, if you think you're a loser and you're broke, it's going to continually scan for evidence that that is true.
Right.
And help you create some, by the way. So if this idea of when focusing on what you're not or what you don't have or whatever, it is, I actually think, I wasn't going to say this, but I do think this is true. I actually think that we have started focusing too much on this in the spiritual community. And by that, I mean, if you look at, I've been talking about this a bit in the last few weeks, I've been writing about it, but I feel that this endless focus on a particular thing that's wrong that we have to fix, right? It gets you so hyper focused, so your tunnel vision going,
right?
That all you're doing is activating not only your what I call the security guard ego, but your spiritual ego is now it's a good job. You've got two going, right? Because all you're focusing on, I want to do all of this healing, not because I desire to be whole and more aligned and more expansive and more me. I'm doing all this. I'm doing Catherine's program and Becky's program and this person's program and that healing and this activation because I want to fix what the fuck is wrong and make things better.
Right.
And I think that's ass backwards. And I think more of us need to start really breaking up. And I get it because a lot of people, part of why I unleashed was I felt that it was that people were coming in with this focus on what they don't have.
Yeah.
Now I do believe there are things like we all are meant to experience more wealth and all of that for sure. And yet that will be a natural byproduct of you becoming more you, more spiritually human and more aligned, more trust, more self-trust. All of that will become the natural result. We don't have to put singular focus on it. We don't have to just focus on our health, just focus on our relationships. And I really feel like if y'all take anything away from this, I really invite you to look at if the things in your life and the motivations that you have to either work with a coach or a healer or do a program or read a book or do whatever it is you do, take a trek to India. What is really the desire behind that? Is it to fix what's wrong? Or is it to become more whole and more you?
Right.
Because I think that's a game changer.
Yes. And it's, of course, we've talked about this as well. It's never that you are not whole. It's that we don't feel whole.
Right.
And everything about this experience, everything about being human is about feeling. I mean, we're going to feel our way into everything first. Yes, this is an action-based physical reality realm. We have to take action towards whatever we desire to have take hold. But it's always the feeling first. And if our motivation is, and I think this is getting to what you're talking about here, is to be whole. Well, what does that mean to be something? You have to feel whole. Yeah. You're never not whole. You are complete. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with anyone here. No one needs fixing. No one is broken.
Nobody's broken. Right.
No one's off their path.
I should have said feel instead of be. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
right.
it's about feeling.
To remember. I mean, it's a remembering again. Remember that
Yes.
you're whole. Just like your soul doesn't get tired. I hate that fucking quote I keep seeing everywhere. That's like,
me too.
My soul's tired. Like your
soul
soul's not
doesn't get
freaking
tired.
tired. Your soul is infinite. It's so much bigger than what you know. Your soul's not tired. Stop posting that quote every place. But it's the same thing. Yes, and words are important. So feeling whole, recognizing, remembering your wholeness, and being more you, because there is a bit of, most of us don't know who the fuck we are, and we've adopted a lot along, and there's nothing here that, where we are in this moment is where we're in this moment. What we've chosen and who we've been and the roles we play and all that, it is what it is. But for most of us, it's not who we truly are. Right. Many of us are not doing what we truly desire. Because
they're just
too big of a risk to move towards what we actually want.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll never do that unless we trust that there is an unfolding, that we're not complete. And we often feel like if we're in this kind of stasis where, days, weeks on end, where we might be feeling the same kind of hopelessness or whatever, even that isn't final. Nothing here is final. Everything here is impermanent.
Yes.
By its very nature. That's the nature of 3D. It's an impermanent realm. We just wrapped up in the illusion here, and we knew when we incarnated here as human that we were here to play with this illusion. But the illusion works both ways. The illusion is something that we can use to create from. Because if everything is illusory and impermanent here, then why don't you have the same ability to create something that's, from the ether, or from something that seems illusory? You have that ability. You're a creator being, and you came here to play with this kind of density. And so we get stuck in this kind of stasis of hopelessness or anger or frustration at the way the world is at the moment or whatever, and we think that this is me, this is forever, this is who I am now. No, this is just a snapshot of you, really, in the cosmic sense of you. This is a blip of you, and it doesn't mean anything unless you allow it to. Yeah,
you sign meaning
trust yourself to pick yourself up from that.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't, sadly.
Right.
And it's because their focus is on the wrong kind of energy. This is me forever. I'm doomed to this fate, whatever that is.
It's just just how I'm made.
You can't create.
Yeah.
Exactly. So your energy has to constantly go back on, okay, well, what is working? What are the things that are happening in the world that are good? What are the things that are happening in my life that are good? Is there hot water in my shower? Awesome. Start there. Yeah. Do I have a nice, delicious cup of coffee every morning waiting for me? Absolutely. Great. Start there. It doesn't matter how small it is. It's a matter of, and a measure of how you feel about that. Does it feel good that you have hot water in your shower? Does it feel good that you have an awesome doggy who, I get to walk with after our talk here today? All those things feel good. Yeah. If I constantly redirect back to what feels good, I'm building creative energy. And this is where the ideas, the potentials, the possibilities line up.
Yes.
In ways that we can't even imagine when we're in the space of fuck my life. Pardon my French.
Yeah. Well, it's part of the remembering that we are creator beings. And there's an important distinction about what you're saying that I want to make sure we point out, because I've talked about this in terms of like affirmations and things before, but it relates to what you just said, which is find the things that are working. Tune into those things first. If people say, I don't have anything that's working. And to your point, it could be the smallest thing in my cozy bed, my cup of coffee, whatever. But it must be real. Like you really must feel what you're saying is like, I enjoy the fuck out of that. I do. Like I get up and it is still dark out and I am alone in this house. Nobody needs me for a thing. And I can have that cup of coffee and have my journal and my candle and my whatever. That truly brings me pleasure and joy. So that is an energy that is in integrity with all of what we're discussing. That's where it's really important, making sure that they're thinking, not that somebody says, oh, I should really love, my cup of coffee. We're talking about connect with the things that really feel good to you.
Yes.
Then we are in an energy of integrity. And that's really, really important when it comes to creating.
Absolutely.
And creating
that
more
connection.
Yeah.
That hits it.
Totally. Yeah. And you're going to build on that. I mean, the more it's kind of like the gratitude practice, which I think can be a little superfluous. And I don't know that I think we've kind of twisted it around. It's like, think of 10 things or think maybe you don't have 10 things today, but think about the 3 that really truly were yours. And then connecting with how it felt when you remember is like, oh my God, I know. Like when I see my granddaughter, you know, my baby granddaughters, like, oh my God, the smells and the deliciousness and all the yummy yummies, like that's going to get me through anything that day. And feel how your frequency is naturally raising. It's not an artificial, I have to raise my frequency and hold it there. It's a natural state of being that when we're connected to the things that feel good, that bring us pleasure, joy, all of that, that we naturally enter into a state that is really more of where we should be in order to be able to create what we want.
Right. Because it's alignment. Because we've talked about it. It's you're in or you're out. How do you know you're in? How do you feel?
Yeah.
Do you feel lit up? Do you feel excited? Do you feel expansive in your body? No? Do you feel contracted in your body? Feel closed off from the fullness of life? You're not in alignment. It really is that simple. And you can, you know, talk about it all day long, and I do. But it's, you're in or you're out. And how do you know you're in or you're out? Do you feel good or do you feel like shit?
Yep.
There you go. You're welcome.
The universe likes things simple. Yes. And that's the simplest way.
Always.
Use pleasure, and how you feel is your barometer, period, the end. You feel good. Does the idea of this light you up? Does doing it feel great? Do you feel excited afterwards, or like this really lovely sense of contentment, like that worn out, like, feeling that's so good? That's how you know.
Yeah.
There's not any big mystical, esoteric kind of concept. It is literally as simple as that. And if you live your life more in that space, more in that energy, that frequency, that way of being, you will create more of that. That expands. You're looking for evidence. You're going to create more evidence of that.
Right.
That's how it works. If you want the secret to the universe, we just gave it to you. The secret to everything you want, that is it. For free. You're welcome. Y'all have any questions? Nobody's typing anything. I can't believe it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we need some questions to keep us going. I mean, not that we need that to keep us going.
I know.
We're here for you guys. This is meant to be interactive.
They're just,
but maybe this will get the juices flowing, because since this is called the pleasure and pain of self-trust, you know, we talked about, we wanted to highlight both sides of this, right? And so the pain of self-trust, and we'll bring it back around to the pleasure, because we never want to end on a sour note. Yeah. But the pain of self-trust is, we touched on this a little bit when we talked about, you know, when you make a commitment to yourself that you do not make good on. Okay. Because there's a lack of self-trust even involved in not showing up for yourself in that way. Like making a promise, a commitment to yourself, and then just not doing it. And you can have excuses and reasons for it all day long, but did you do the thing or did you not do the thing? It's okay if you do it tomorrow, but are you doing it? Do you really, if you're honest with yourself, do you plan on doing this thing? Or is it something that you just have as this fantasy? Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with fantasies, but if you want your life to look like the fantasy, you have to take action on those commitments. You actually have to. And the pain of self-trust, meaning not being in the place of self-trust, is that erosion that you feel. You literally erode self-trust within you. You erode self-belief. You erode a sense of self-love too, because a measure of self-love is taking care of yourself. It's not just going and getting a mani-pedi. Now, self-care and self-love is not a spa day. Self-care and self-love is how you treat yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you make good on the commitments to yourself. How you prioritize every single day. It's not a one-off thing. Because you signed up for a course and you committed to that for 4 weeks. Okay, what about the rest of the 48 weeks of the year? Yeah. You know, right? Yeah. And so it's a daily commitment. And the reason you make a daily commitment to yourself is because you trust that you're always evolving. You're always growing. You're always moving in the direction that aligns with your desires, that aligns with what feels good for you, or you're not. Yeah. Well, you'll feel more disconnected. I mean, if you want to know, you know, because sometimes we get a lot, you do, and I think I do too. We get a lot of the like why and how of like I want to understand why and how. So for those of you who are like, well, you know, okay, I hear you,
about the pain part, but here's what it will also feel like, the erosion, like Catherine was saying. But how often do I hear someone say they feel disconnected, or they can't hear their intuition,
Right.
or they, again, that uncertainty, they don't know what to do, they're not sure. All of that is telling you plainly that you're living primarily in an energy that is not one of self-trust and not one of alignment.
Agreed.
So that's a really good way for you to know. And that is where I talk a lot about spiritual discipline, and it's not sexy, but it's required. That becomes the discipline of, I'm going to look at that and go, well, now I know what I know. I can't unknow it. What am I do about it? Now, what actions am I taking? Because I do love myself and I'm worth this. I'm worth choosing my actions based on what I actually desire, not what someone tells me I should. And if you're constantly breaking commitments to yourself, I would also say reflect on, are you making commitments that you actually desire? Or are you making commitments that you think you should desire? I want to, I need to lose weight, so I should go to the gym, is not a real desire. Not one that's coming from a place of that is going to light the fuck up out of me.
Well said.
So that is another opportunity. I'm telling you, the system of the universe is so simple, and it's so simple to know. How we make it really complicated, because usually we just don't want to look at what's really right in front of us, which is generally we're not making choices from that place, not putting ourselves first, and not prioritizing our relationship, our connection to self and source. Yes.
I would totally agree with that. And another piece of that too is, when some of my clients said to me in the past, I don't feel connected, I don't hear the voice of my higher self. We go deeper, and I say, well, what if you did hear the voice of your higher self?
That's what I
say. What if you heard it? And if you did, what do you think it would be saying to you? So it's kind of a game we play with ourselves, because we fucking know. I'm sorry.
Always know.
I'm spicy this week. We know. Yeah. And so, you can't just call it out like that. You got to go a little bit deeper and get them to answer their own questions, because I'm not here to answer anyone's questions about themselves.
That's right.
Because that exists inside every single one watching here, or in the replay, inside you and I. I don't have your answers. You have your answers.
That's a big
My
part
job
of
is to guide you to them.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's never that you're not connected to your higher self. You are always connected to your higher self.
Yep.
It is a navigation piece, just like your ego programming is, except it's not the loudest voice in your head like the ego is. It doesn't need to be, because it's not constantly crying and screaming for your attention like the ego is. But it's always there. It's programming running in the background of your life, just like your ego is. But it's often telling us, and when I get to this piece and we go deeper in the client work, of if the higher self did have something to tell you, what would it be saying to you? It is almost always, not always, but almost always something they just don't want to hear.
That's right.
They would rather not take action on that. Thank you very much. It's too big for whatever reason. It's not for me. It's
leading a relationship,
and I failed, and I really don't want to look at this piece of myself. Right. So that's what we're really getting to there. It's never that you're not connected. It's not ever that your higher self isn't giving you navigation pieces or breadcrumbs back to yourself.
Yes.
Because it's always doing that.
Yeah.
But we might not want to see things or act on them is often the case.
That's right. Well, and if you have an ego that's very loud, or you have you're very active mental body, or highly intellectual, both Catherine and I can probably relate to that. One of the ways that you can try to access that, just I would like practical advice, is what I call the rapid fire. So exactly what Catherine says, if you did know, what would the answer be? Usually you're talking about, let's just give an example, because I think that's always helpful. Let's say that you're, agonizing about whether to stay in your marriage. I'll just throw that one out there. And I'll say exactly what Catherine says usually, which is, well, if you did know, I'm going to ask you rapid fire, no answering. Should you stay in your marriage? Yes or no? They know the answer. It's a yes or no. Yeah, but, and then the reason excuses come. But the answer is always that little something right underneath all the
Yep.
jabber jabber. You always know, and you can find ways and come up with tools and ways for you to access until it just becomes your nature to be that.
Absolutely.
All the time. But we are never, ever, ever, ever disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
We're not listening, we're not hearing, we're hearing everything else, but we're never disconnected. God, source, universe, your higher self never pulls away.
Mm-hmm.
We'll
never abandon you.
Never abandon, never.
No.
It's just not how it works. So that's where with my clients, at least it's always about empowering them to remember, first of all, that truth, and then developing those tools, the toolbox, to uncover that voice, when so many other voices for some of us have been really, really loud for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, right? Got a lot of practice. So that is, though, the primary. I mean, we started with the connection piece, and that connection piece is what's going to give you naturally, if you're just prioritizing your connection to your higher self and source, you will start to create that safety for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be connected to the divine and not have an energy of safety, right? At least in your system. Right. And then it gives you the time and space and ability to start intentionally creating safety for yourself, right, which develops more and more of that trust, right?
Yes. And, I think it comes down to a piece as well, that are you available for that level of support?
Yeah.
If there's no room for you to have that energetically, for whatever reason, whatever, beliefs you might have that are in opposition to, well, I'm not available for that level of support, or if your energy is too mired in, again, all the things you don't have, and all the ways you are somehow an inefficient human or piece of flesh on this planet because you don't have this, or you're not this way of being yet, and whatever, that's a way that we can make ourselves unavailable.
That's right.
For that level of support. And again, the self-trust of being able to know that you have, I mean, obviously you and I both do a lot of client work, and we often, hopefully not as much as we used to, need to correct people that, hey, you know what? I don't have your answers. Please don't look to me.
That's right.
To give you the answers you're looking for. Yes. My job is to guide you back to that part of yourself that already knows. If you created the problem, in other words, then you have that polarity that lives right in within you of the answer. And in my opinion, the problem and the answer exist in the same space. Yeah. Always. They're just different energetics of it. Yes. That's polarity in a nutshell, right? Mm-hmm. If one thing has to exist, the law of polarity, which is in an immutable universal law, dictates that the equal and opposite energy also exists. Yeah. So the problem and solution often exist in the same level of space. And you can just explore them as just like two sides of one coin. Yes. And if you think that someone else has the answer to a problem that you created within you, you are incorrect. Yes. Because the answer lives right in the same space as the problem oftentimes. And if we don't trust ourselves, we miss out on that opportunity. Because how many times have you worked with a client, Becky, where you lead them to this truth within themselves, that the problem, the answer exists in the same space, and here you are finding it, going after it. What kind of liberation do you see that lights up that client when they're in that space of discovering their own answer that exists within themselves? Yes. It's an incredibly satisfying and fulfilling moment, and I would never dare dream rob anyone of that by giving them my take, my opinion on what an answer might be. I would never dare dream to do that to anyone.
It's like my most fun thing ever.
Get lit up when they're like, I figured it out. Like, yeah, you did. And it was there the whole time, Dorothy. Click your heels together 3 times and go home. You did it.
Yes.
It's an amazing space. And that is what lights up and bolsters your self-trust. Always.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, it's like literally one of my most favorite things is when that happens. And it can happen in all kinds of ways, that knowing and and understanding and realization comes forward. But a couple things happen, and it happens to, I've seen when people discover they've been in that space, and then they're starting to uncover deeper sense of purpose and all of that.
Yeah.
But immediately you see, and I've actually done something where I've started taking photographs or screenshots of somebody before when we're talking, and then take one after and watch. There is a physical change,
of course,
to the face. There's an immediate, the smile comes. The person looks like they're about 10 years younger, and they always laugh. Always. Every time. I mean, is the most beautiful. It's one of the reasons I love having groups and group programs, is because I love for other women to witness it. And it's so much fun to see, like, everybody, like, all of a sudden we all see, we're like, yes, there she goes. And it's so beautiful. But I couldn't agree more that it's the two sides of the coin. It's the reason why, you look at like shadow work, for example, and some of us get really attached to this idea. We talked at the beginning about healing with the need to fix something, getting at, and really if you could look at it from the perspective of, I'm already whole and I'm not broken. It becomes think about it this way. I'm creating more space. I'm creating space for exactly what we were talking about earlier, for myself to experience more of who I actually am.
Yeah.
Because I feel like when we take on a lot of roles, or we're doing a lot of shoulds, or some of us have created entire lives circled around roles that no longer fit or need to be changed, or we are doing things, careers, families, whatever, that wasn't actually what we wanted, what we desired. And that creates a lot of contraction, a lot of heaviness, a lot of density. And so when we can start looking at, not that you're wanting to fix it, but that unbecoming, that, shedding almost, you're just creating more capacity for your truth, your power, your wholeness to be here. And this
absolutely
place, right? Which is so powerful and beautiful.
It is, every single time. And you can, I love that you take pictures of your clients in that space, because you can tell. People wear it. People wear their alignment like it's a piece of clothing.
Yes. Or misalignment.
And you and I, and many who are watching here, are very adept at picking up on energetic signals. We can see it. We can see it when we're navigating out in the world, walking in the park. Who's in alignment with who they are and who isn't. And there's no judgment on that. It's just it's an occupational hazard.
Yeah.
That when I'm out in public, and amongst a bunch of people, I can't not do that stuff.
That's right.
That's just me.
Agreed.
But I get a little kick out of it when I can see, or even have just a brief exchange, a word or a thank you with someone who holds the door open for me. Even in those moments, you can see people wear their alignment.
That's right.
Like an article of clothing, and it's a beautiful thing to witness. And those are the people I want to be around. Those people who are, even in uncertain times, and we talked about this last week, there's always an ability for you to have certainty within.
Yeah.
That's your port in the storm, right? That's the self-trust piece, that no matter what happens, because the world is changing daily, let's just face it.
Yeah.
If you trust yourself to be capable and knowing that whatever challenge arises, you got it. You can handle it, of course.
And that you're receiving,
you are living in integrity. You're living in alignment.
Yeah. And that, hello, you're receiving insight, guidance. The bigger vision is coming through. You're not here. You're not an island here, right? You're not alone here. But the more that we are developing that trust, that just means that our connection is even greater.
Exactly. Because we're available for it in that space.
We're more available for it. Doesn't that feel better to imagine navigating what's going on our planet, knowing that really we're just not alone, and that everything that's happening is required, first of all. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but will have a great, I'm just going to speak from my own personal experience. You have a greater sense of ease about it. And we'll have waves where we go, we're like, gosh, I mean, God, I thought maybe we'd be kind of on the other side, or I thought this would have shifted, or for hell, I thought that Canada would maybe be out of lockdown at this point. No, but it feels different in your system to have awareness of what's happening around you. It could be your own immediate family. It could be your partner. It could be whatever. Be able to navigate what's happening around you without being buffeted around by it. That's a totally different place to be. That is what alignment really is. It allows you to feel that you're moored, you know, that's that safety, right? The ship is safe when it's moored safely there.
You're anchored.
Even if there's a storm, right? So
absolutely,
everything hinges on it. Oh, hey, Carrie. Hi. Oh, hi, Lori. Hi, Lori. Hi, Carrie.
Yeah, that's your anchor.
Mm-hmm.
And even for, you know, some of the stuff that's closer to home, I mean, you mentioned what's happening in Canada, and we're looking at things on a planetary scale. Well, what about on a more personal level where we've had differences with our own families? I mean, I can speak to that in my own experience, that, you know, it was a little uglier in the beginning than it is now. At least we've reached some sort of peace treaty with each other. But even in our personal lives, we've maybe perhaps had, you know, relationships, close relationships with family and friends. We've seen that, you know, fall away and collapse as a result of the times that are incredibly tumultuous right now. And the self-trust piece on a really personal level is, are you living in alignment with your personal values and ethics and principles, even in light of what everyone outside of you who, you know, loves you and wants to support you and knows better than you maybe is, you know, chiming in and telling you what's right for you?
Yeah.
Family, it could be coworkers, could be your boss, it could be friends, it could be, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But are you living in alignment with your choice, your daily choice of who you want to be, how you want to proceed? Are you living in alignment with your personal ethics, values, principles, or are you living at odds with that?
That's right.
That's another way we erode self-trust, is if we're making choices based on someone's better informed opinion, but it happens to not jibe with our own.
Yeah.
And we can go into a lot of regret. We can go into a lot of blame and shame, and it's no coincidence that shame has been wielded as such a powerful tool in these times to make us do the right thing. And there's no coincidence that that's being used, because that is one of the lowest vibrating emotions on this whole spectrum of experience that we have here on planet Earth is shame. It's also the thing that puts you most out of alignment with who you are and living with the core truth of yourself, living in alignment with the core truth of yourself. And if you're making choices that go against that, more self-betrayal, more self-denial, that's never going to feel good. And that's never going to be a place where you make the best, most informed choices about your life going forward. You're not going to make good decisions in that place. You're just not.
Well, you know, it's
part
of
why, off and icky.
Yeah. Part of why I mean, I don't want to go too much into what's happening, you know, specifically with all of this in the collective. However, I will say that is for people that have repeatedly said, how can people not see, or why aren't more people waking up to the truth, or why are they still believing this? Let me just say, this is why. Because more people than we might realize went against their instincts, their intuition, and did something they didn't really want to do, but didn't have the strength and self-trust to say no to. They are then having a really hard time. They will not allow themselves to face that truth. And so they stay really, really, really attached to the choice they made and really, really loud about it. That is why people are not, you're not seeing a lot of people be like, well, I don't know, I wish I hadn't, or, well, this seems a little, maybe I made the wrong decision. Most humans, because they're not connected or not consciously, their ego will not allow for that. It's too risky.
So that's interesting. Do you think it's more of a choice that I better just save face rather than be authentic and true to what I feel is right? And even if that admits, like, that admission is some sort of backpedaling or makes me look like I'm
I don't think
lesser
it's
than
conscious.
by admitting that I'm wrong, that people are willing to save face instead and just stay aligned with their original choice?
No, my feeling is when I feel into the collective in that way, it's actually a protective mechanism. I believe that the ego, I mean, a lot of the time is, I mean, it came online to be our protector, right? That's its role. And so, especially for people who are unconscious, they had the intuitive nudge, like, maybe wait, or I don't know about this, maybe we shouldn't, whatever. But, you know, their mom or their boss or whoever talked them into something against their own, what they might have had a pause even, right? They just might have had a moment of pause. The truth is that their truth was they really weren't sure yet. Let's just say that. And they did it anyway. So what I sense is that they're holding on real tight to their original position, just like pro everything, as a protective mechanism, because it would be really too much for them to face the truth. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, I do. I also feel part of that is maybe a lot to unravel to go back. You know, it's like there's so much has been created by making a certain choice to go with the selected.
Well, it's kind of like if you're having
narrative.
a fight.
So much has been built around that in people's lives at this point, because we're talking about 3 years into this thing at this point.
That's right.
I also think maybe there's, sorry to say it, a little bit of laziness about, well, then I have to deconstruct everything I built around this too.
And choices I've made sense, right?
Yeah.
I didn't see so-and-so before they died. My mother is sitting in the nursing home for 2 years and I haven't seen her. I didn't have my daughter's wedding. Like, I mean, there's a lot tied up in that. Yes. That makes it really hard for someone to be willing to look at it and say, I think I might have, maybe we were all wrong. Instead, they're going to stay attached to that narrative because it's just easier. It's just easier. But it's kind of like when you have a fight with your partner, right? It's like, do you want to be right? Or you're going to hold, if you just want to be right, you're going to hold on to your position no matter what, even if you feel in your heart like, oh, maybe he's got a point, but I'm not going to tell him that. Right? It's sort of the same, it's kind of the same thing. So when we go against, and now those are the perfect moments. How many things escalate because we don't tune into our heart and trust that we can just say, you know, maybe you have a point, or maybe I went overboard. Let's just take a second, right? Everything comes back to this, exactly what we're talking about. All of it, everything, every big, little, esoteric, non-esoteric, has to do with your connection to self and source and your level of trust that you can handle whatever it is. I know, I mean, I have not wavered since the very beginning of this whole thing, because I don't trust, or I don't believe that the divine is going to mislead me. And I trust what I received as my intuitive guidance about it, more than I trust anything anybody else is telling me. I don't care how many people on the planet are saying it. So it was very easy for me. So I actually personally have not had the experience of having any kind of negative interaction with anybody. My family are all, including my children, the thing, and nobody has ever said a word to me about it, about me doing it, not doing it. There's not been one conversation, just like, hey, it's not been a thing.
That's very fortunate.
Yes. And I know it's
not the case for a lot of folks.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying that I do think it is a bit that I kind of held the energy of like, you can try and talk to me about it. Like, I know where my information's coming from, right? Yes. But I think that again, it's that sense of ease in my system. I've had a sense, there's a lot that's been a pain in the ass, but I have had a sense of ease in my system about it. In spite of, I know I'm very well aware of what's happening around in the collective and seeing it. And I know that, first of all, it's necessary. And second of all, that I can trust myself and source.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Because that's our safety, you know, going back to that piece of what we need is if you are constantly choosing yourself, that's your safety.
Yes.
And you can't choose yourself unless you trust yourself, you know?
Right. Yeah.
There's a quote that I love that if you choose the crowd, you lose yourself. If you choose yourself, you lose the crowd.
That's exactly right. I love that too.
That's a piece I keep coming back to. And I will admit I did waver a little bit, but every time I did, and I even entertained the idea, it was just like a hard no. It was a hard no, hard pass, just don't do it, just wait. And I constantly get the messaging of like, just wait. This isn't forever. And those of us who feel like this is forever, let me just go ahead and say it out loud so you hear it. This isn't forever. This too is a blip. This too is impermanent. And it's so tipped out of balance that the nature of the universe does not let anything tip out of balance for too long in one direction. There will be a redirect. There has to be. It's one of the immutable universal laws of polarity. So hang in there.
Yeah.
I know it sucks, but it's also an opportunity. I feel like this great reset is happening for a lot of different reasons. Number one, we are experiencing Earth's transition into a higher timeline. That's something I talk about all the time. If you're in my world, you're in my community, this is what I talk about all the time, every time. That is never an easy process.
Yeah.
We have to learn how to calibrate different emotionally,
yeah,
mentally, physically, spiritually.
Yeah.
I mean, in all of our fields in and around the body, everything is changing. Everything is, you know, going a little bit higher in the frequency gradient. This is an uncomfortable transition process. And what we're witnessing as things fall away, systems, ideas, we get to see the illusion really for what it is as we move into a higher timeline, because that's what comes with the territory, folks. Yeah. It is not unicorn farts and rainbows. It's just not. It's not built into that. Okay. Right. So that piece that has to be just unfuckable with is your self-trust.
Yeah.
That, you know, this is going to be stuff that it's going to be protracted. It's going to be drawn out. I mean, we're probably, if I'm honest, looking at another year and a half of this before it starts to feel like, okay, I can breathe again. We're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
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 So in that time, here's the thing. Are you just waiting? Are you waiting for something external to you to change or dictate to you what your inner reality is going to be? Well, you're going to be waiting a really long fucking time. Or are you in that space of, okay, every day is a fresh opportunity to mine this level of self-trust that I know is here. I know I have it. I know I have self-belief. I know I have greater self-love. Instead of waiting for something to happen that gives you the green light to do that? Or is it a choice that you make that you align with the strength and support that's already there?
Yeah.
You already have it.
Yeah, your
personal journey by some fairy dust later on.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And your journey, your experience, your connection, what you're being guided to do every moment is not stopping because there is a pandemic.
Right.
We all still have a personal life experience that we are going through. You're all experiencing still. You might be maybe being nudged. And that is what I think a lot of, when we're talking about this, can give you such a sense of like, I don't know, it's not going to, what was it I want to say? It'll give you a sense of purpose to some degree. You're not going to be sitting just ruminating, waiting for that. When you really are like, hey, this is my priority now. Shit, if I'm on lockdown again, I have the time and the focus to be able to do this work, right? So it's understanding that if you're feeling like you've come to a screeching halt, that's a choice you're making, because you are not on a screeching halt.
True.
So that reconnecting to self, reconnecting to or developing more self-trust and really starting to prioritize listening to those intuitive nudges and then acting from that place so that that can be continued. The trust can be developed more and more and more and more. What better time? Because in a lot of ways, we're not distracted by some outer shit. Right. So really it's a good chance, I would say, to reflect on your life. Are you still participating actively, or are you kind of on pause? Are you kind of waiting? Are you just watching a lot of Netflix? Are you just like, you kind of just think when things start moving again, then you'll start moving again. You're missing out on a lot of your life.
Right.
Even though it might feel like things are smaller and more contracted and more restricted and all of that.
Right.
Maybe it doesn't.
I mean, you can almost think of it as like Earth's retrograde.
Yeah.
Like we talk about Mercury retrograde and how that's like, it screws up communication and travel and any kind of, things that you would contractually make with another person or whatever. And it's not that we stop living our lives because it's Mercury retrograde. I mean, we're in one protracted Earth retrograde that's been going on 3 years plus now. So do you just stop living your life? Do you stop your own personal evolution? And to think that you can is erroneous, because it's not possible. We're constantly growing and evolving and changing and shifting. So that's only a perspective of stasis from a part of you that's not very informed.
Yeah.
Your ego.
Yep.
Because it has no purview over seeing what is possible, what the potential is. It only can give you feedback and advice on something you've personally experienced or something that's part of the collective experience. And so if we keep constantly going back and delegating our awareness and focus to this part of us to give us some advice, some feedback, some directive, good fucking luck, because that part of you has no idea what the flying fig is going on. It has no idea that we're in an evolving Earth timeline where everything is, really on a trajectory of changing and shifting in ways that we can't even imagine from this level of self.
It's like you're dialing up.
Go back to this.
Totally. You have two phone numbers and you're one is ego and one is self and source. And you keep calling ego.
It's on speed dial.
And then someone said the other day, and then you get heavy breathing. Right? All you hear is heavy breathing. Like he's got nothing to say to you. And then you're like, well, see, I don't know. I'm not hearing anything. No, you're calling the wrong number.
Yeah.
So really, we do have to get back. It is simple, and to me, this is the clarion call of this time on the planet for all of us who are at any stretch awake to our spiritual nature, which the majority of the collective is not, and we understand that. But for those of us who are, I do believe that we have a bigger purpose here. Yeah. That we must tune in especially during this time, tune into self, tune into source, tune into your intuitive nudges, take action from that place, develop your greater level of self-trust, allow yourself to shed some of the shit that you've gathered along the way up until this point that you don't need anymore, and start creating evidence for yourself of who you really are, what potential really exists for you as a spiritual human. That will change everything. And living from a place of what fucking feels good. What do you desire? What brings you pleasure? What brings you joy? Those are not feelings that exist as like a side note that, God just thought maybe I ought to throw something kind of good at you. It is your barometer for alignment. That is that simple.
Absolutely. Right. And, anybody and everybody can look at the world and see what's not working. That's the easy way out. Anybody and everybody who has eyes to see can look at the division, the separation, the othering that's happening every single day.
Yep.
Anybody can do that. That's the easy way out.
Totally. It's a lazy way, quite frankly.
Looking at what's working.
Yeah.
What's working in the world, what's working in your life, and use that foundation, use that energy base to build you up and give you the creative mana to imagine things that aren't currently happening on the planet. You haven't currently done or anyone else has currently done. Yeah. It's only from that level of perspective are you going to be able to tap in to that level of imagination, that level of creativity, that level of energy in order to do the damn thing.
Yep.
It's never going to be from this fuck my life energy of look at how everybody's being really crappy to each other in the world, and look at how things are eroding in my own family or whatever. You're never going to create anything wholesome.
Yep.
From that perspective. You can still create from there.
Yeah.
But it won't be wholesome. It won't be aligned.
No, that's right. And you're not going to, there's not going to, I'm always I do find humans fascinating that anyone would believe that you can create something positive from that place. Like even in your own family, if you're seeing your family from a lens, first of all, could we see our families, if you have a family even that's, let's just say, been really harsh or judgmental of you, do you have to play that back? What if you, as the person who sees that we are more than just this 3D self, that person is operating from, first of all, the highest place that they can. They know they know what they know, what their life experience is, and they want safety. They think that's going to get it. And they're going to fight anybody that says otherwise if that's truly what they feel is going to keep them safe. Now, I'm not saying it's right that they're acting like assholes, but I am saying, as someone who is awake to our nature as all divine beings, I can have a little bit more compassion for it. And then set up some boundaries with that compassion in mind, right? So that changes family dynamics, even if it just means that there's not more conflict. Doesn't mean they're going to necessarily come to your level of awareness or what you believe or whatever. That's not the goal. We might think it is. Really, the goal is peace, harmony.
Yes.
Connection. Or a releasing of relationships that are complete. And for a lot of people, I will say this, even families, even family units, we have a misunderstanding about relationships. And we think that many of them, even if you're born into it, that it has to stay connected forever. You know, you have to be like, and what this did for a lot of people was interrupt and break away relationships that actually weren't serving. And some of those were close, maybe family even.
Yeah, the legacy patterning we experience as part of our ancestry and genealogy. A lot of that got broken.
Yes.
Because some of it was unwholesome. And I believe that anything that's available to be broken is something that is not wholesome or in integrity in the first place.
That's right.
Otherwise, it's indestructible because it's built on love.
Right.
So if it's built on fear, it's available to be broken. It's available for collapse.
Yes. So if you're feeling, it's natural to feel, you know, sad or upset or mad or whatever, but then also stepping back and having that bigger perspective, trusting exactly what Catherine said. If this relationship has fallen away or changed in this way, then I'm trusting, then that is exactly as it should be.
Yeah.
I mean, everything, do you feel how that even just all of that, like having that kind of awareness brings a greater sense of ease? It doesn't mean we don't feel the feelings, but it does mean you don't have to get so attached and then start putting meaning on it that's not there and something's wrong with you and your family's abandoned you and all that, like feel how all big and dark and heavy that gets. And that's actually not required. We can just allow.
And if we keep having this kind of exchange with our family members where it's like this battle for, you know, whoever's going to win.
It can be anybody.
Right.
Your boss.
Then if you're available for that, knowing what you know, that means you're available for the trigger.
Yes.
Right. You're available for playing the game at the level being set by someone you would see as your opponent, in other words.
Yeah.
Are you available for that anymore? And the biggest part of self-trust is being able to inhabit a kind of neutrality in the face of a triggering person, a triggering situation, whatever it might be. Yeah. Can you maintain your neutrality? Can you, in other words, maintain alignment with your own ethics, values, and principles so that you don't need to cave or engage at an ego level in a argument or altercation?
Yeah.
Can you be bigger than that, knowing what you know, in other words? And this is, yes, it's difficult in some situations because you just want to shake people sometimes. I'm there. Hey, I'm spiritual, but if I have to tell somebody to fuck off, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But I do it in a way where it's like, you got to fuck off because I'm over here. I'm doing this thing. Not available for that. I'm not
You just gotta fuck off.
You gotta fuck off. You know, bless you. I hope you figure out and, you know, find the answers you're looking for.
Yeah.
But the exchange stops here. And it is a way of boundary protection, really, because it's not to keep that other person out. It's to keep the integrity of my energy in.
It's a very different thing.
And that's a huge piece of self-trust. Oh my God, we should have talked about this earlier, but it's a huge piece of self-trust is having those personal boundaries.
Yes.
So you can maintain neutrality.
Yeah. And exactly what you said, though, this is a really important distinction in my mind anyway. A boundary put up to maintain your own integrity, your own connection, what you believe is true for you, and not to push someone else away.
Right.
And that may seem, you're like, well, it's the same thing, but it's not. The intention behind that, and intention is everything. The intention behind that, keeping people out, pushing them away, has a very, feel the energy of that when we just think about it. Is very, I'm really like, a lot of my clients are really working with like what I call the contextual quality of energy. And when you're doing that, anytime you're doing this to someone, that's not coming from your connection, your wholeness, your alignment.
And it's othering, which we're doing very well on
othering
this time.
Versus this is my space. This is my, you know, you can be my bubble, it can be whatever. Out of love and honoring myself first, because it's always self first, always.
Yes.
I do not allow you and do not invite you in. Do not invite you in. I stay here. You stayed there. Namaste. Bye-bye. Right? Or you must fuck off.
Compassionately.
Fuck off.
Compassionately said.
Please.
Because we can
with
still
love
be
and honoring you and as a
energy.
divine being, you must fuck off.
Exactly.
That is a very different thing. It's a very different energy.
It really
and when
is.
you live like that.
Yes, we can still be in that compassionate witness energy and notice that, okay, not for me. Not for me.
Compassion doesn't mean we have to accept it.
No.
But it does bring a level of awareness. It does. I keep saying ease in the system, but to me, because that's for the nervous system and everything else, that ease is a change maker. When you can have a level of compassion, not put meaning on something or take something personally that really isn't fucking about you, and create a boundary from a healthy place of self-love, that feels totally different. Your experience will be completely different, and likely the other person's experience, because usually people are being pushed away, right? And so that's the kind of thing we talk about, you know, the ripple effect and all of these things. Those are they never say another word about it, but they will feel that.
Yeah.
And as a light bearer or way shower or whatever your word is you like, that is a really important part of why we're here, to do things differently. You can be a motherfucker like everybody else is being to each other. But that's
easy. That's easy
that is
to
the
do.
Easy, lazy version of humaning. It just is. So how do we do it different? We do it different by prioritizing ourselves, returning to our connection with self and source, and developing our self-trust.
Yes.
And then ultimately self-love.
And it's a daily choice we make.
A second by second choice sometimes.
Yes. So if we're to wrap this up here, because my computer is about to run out of juice and my poor dog is needing a walk. But if we're to wrap this up, what would be your final words on this conversation?
My final words would be, if your life isn't feeling good, if you feel disconnected, if you're feeling stuck, if you feel overwhelmed by what's happening in the collective, if you feel overwhelmed by you think you can't change things for yourself, that you keep trying and nothing works, right? All of that, then I hope that you'll maybe go back and watch this whole thing and let the little energetic seeds plant for you. But ultimately, the truth is, it is making choices for self first, connecting to self, higher self, source, developing that self-trust through the practices of the the littlest daily actions to the bigger ones, like creating a really compassionate boundary. So it's all of those things matter, and it will change how your experiences of life and how you feel in it. And ultimately, then that will start allowing you to be seeing the evidence of your wholeness, your truth, your power, and your connection, because then the natural result will be you'll be able to connect, receive, and flow with more abundance, love, health, purpose, all of it, as we are designed.
And it'll show up in surprising ways.
Yes.
Yes. Ways that you couldn't even imagine when you were in a different perspective.
Totally. Absolutely.
Yes.
What would you say?
I'm going to go way out here and bring it out to like the cosmic perspective and say this, that every single person on this call, whether you're here live watching us, which is awesome. Thank you for being here live, everyone.
Thanks,
or you're
Becky.
watching the replay on Becky's group or in Becky's group or on her personal page or on my YouTube channel later. This is going to be true for every single one of you. You could have incarnated as anything, any being, anywhere, anytime, any lifetime, any dimension, any space, any reality.
Yep.
You could have, because you're infinite, you're eternal, and you are tapped into source consciousness, and you could have been consciousness experiencing itself as any one of those things in any time, any place, anywhere. But you're here.
Yep.
You were either chosen, selected, both, and you're here. It's not an accident. This is an incredibly auspicious timeline for planet Earth, going through a major, massive shift and transition. It's not an accident. So if you think you just came here to wait it out, to just pay bills, you know, to just people please and show up for family and make everyone else outside of you feel better or more comfortable, that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
You came here to bring something. You wouldn't be here on this timeline of planet Earth at this time if that wasn't the case. So it's like we all have this kind of unique, personalized responsibility to bring something to the planet. And you may not be able to put your finger on what that is. That's okay. That's incidental. That's secondary.
Right.
But it's about who you be. And who you be is always how you want to feel. Do you want to feel like someone who trusts him or herself? Do you want to feel love for yourself? Because you can't love everything and everyone outside of you if you can't love yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you want to participate in this unique Earth experience? Because it is very unique Earth experience right now. How much do you want to participate in that?
Mm-hmm.
You get to decide. And it's micro choices, micro commitments that we make all day, every day.
Yeah.
And who you be is really the sum total of all those things. So there's no part that's, the minutia. There's no part that's so small or a little memento. There's nothing, there's nothing small about any of this. So stop treating it that way.
Yes.
And if there's, like Becky said, something in this conversation that, made your higher self's ears perk up, go back, listen to that, because there's something else for you there. There's another layer there. There's another piece there, and share this video. If you think that this is something that your brothers and sisters want to hear, some people in your community, please share this.
Yeah.
And you'll make it available outside of the group, Becky,
Yes.
and I will too.
Yep.
Because I think there's some really good stuff here. And I think there's something for everyone in this call, I think.
Yes.
But if you take away anything, you're not just here to wait it out.
You're not a
You're too
placeholder.
big for that. You wouldn't be here otherwise.
That is exactly
so act
right.
accordingly, please.
If you're here and you're awake to your spiritual nature, you're here for something bigger.
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
Absolutely.
tell us a little bit about what's going on for you, and I'll come after you.
Oh yeah, exciting stuff. So I have done 3 live summits before, virtual summits. They are in my We Are New Earth group. Many of you watching are already in that group. Becky, if you wouldn't mind supplying the link in here. That is a 3-day live summit. It's going to be in my We Are New Earth Facebook group, February 25th, 26th, 27th. Starts at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern on the 25th. And it's a 3-day, totally free event. Over 30 presenters talking about all things spiritual awakening, all things
Yours
people
truly
teaching, doing activations. Becky's going to be presenting on Friday, I believe.
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing lineup of people, as always, when I offer this event. I mean, I've paid thousands of dollars for things where I didn't get this much great content for something that is just totally free. There's
Awesome.
something for everyone in this
Awesome.
event. So please join. It's going to be fantastic. If anyone would like to be a speaker, I think I still have like 5 spots left. Also, my next live program, In Alignment. A lot of the things that we're talking about here go right into what we get into in this deep dive program that starts on March 10th. And if you wanted to check out more about that, just go to catherinemissel.com and you can learn about that there. Or join my We Are New Earth Facebook group, which is a free Facebook group where I'll be having the summit, the Boldly Free Summit. So timely.
Yay.
So I'm excited about that. Thanks for letting me share that.
Yeah, and I'll post the links to everything in here. And they used to let us like link to other groups, but they don't do that anymore. You used to be able to have favorite groups, and you were in the other one. But yeah, I can't wait. The last couple of years have been awesome. I mean, and I'm always see people I don't even know. I'm like, how are we all in the same circle? And I don't know you. So check it out for sure. The summit, and then your In Alignment program, as always, amazing. For me, I have a 2-week workshop coming up March 14th. I didn't have a name for it until I told Catherine. I met with Matt Kahn yesterday, and he was talking about my work, and he was tuning in energetically, and he described it as exquisite. So the group name is going to be Exquisite, and it is going to be 2 weeks of energy work in physical, emotional, mental, spiritual layers. And so we're going to do some work with clearing, integrating, and then also activating some of the templates and codes in each of those layers. And then I also have oracle readings going on, you guys. I never offer these, and it's not.
And your oracle readings are fire.
They are fire, and they're very activating, and they are from a place of empowerment. I'm not there to give you a premonition. That's not how it works. It's a story style, but you and I are creating it together. It's super empowering, but you want some clarity, you'll get it. I promise you. I always say it's like God sat down on the bed and was like, all right, hey, I got to tell you something. Like that. So those are open. I don't know how long, because probably only maybe a couple months, because then things will be different. And then I have some one-to-one spots. I have another group program down the road, but I do have some one-to-one coaching and healing spots available, which I have not had any for the last like 8 months. So I have a couple.
Exciting stuff. And if you wouldn't mind shooting those links to me, because when I post my YouTube, I'll put them in the YouTube.
Oh yeah, sure.
Info.
Yes. Yes, yes. So everybody that was here, thank you for being live with us. And
yes, thank you, everyone.
Watching the replay. I'm glad that you're watching the replay. I hope that this was of service to you guys, the divine definition, and that you'll really just take a minute to self-reflect on some of what we said, and hopefully it'll bring you a little bit of a beam of light to some places where maybe you can deepen your relationship to self. So
that's always our hope.
Always.
That's always our hope.
That is the single biggest thing I think the two of us have in common, is wanting to really empower every woman that comes into our world. It's not about us. We're the facilitator, the conduits, the teachers, the guides, but for you to find.
Absolutely. It's our passion and our driving ambition.
Yes.
Yes.
Totally. Totally. So thank you, my darling. I love you.
Thank you, Becky. It's always a pleasure. We always bring the fire. It's always so exciting. And vote on whether you would like to see us in a podcast or not.
Yeah, vote on podcast or program or both.
There you go. All right, Becky.
All right.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Guys.
Thanks, everyone.
And
Bye-bye.
I'll talk to you after.
Okay.